We're ranking all of the position groups in the NFC East today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who make Locked On NFL Scouting your first listen every day, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much.
Joe, I want to know if you're buying or selling this quote from an NFC East player.
As it being factual, or what do you mean?
Yeah, are you buying or selling this being a factual statement from Jalen Hyatt on the New York Giants? Quote, we have a playoff team.
You'd hope he would say something like that. I'm not buying.
I'm just asking you to buy or sell it.
Yeah, I'm selling
on my timeline as we're getting ready to do an NFC show, so it's a topical lead-in.
I'm absolutely selling that. Let's see here. FanDuel has the over/under for wins for the New York Giants set at 6.5. So if they beat that by 4, we'll probably make the playoffs.
I don't know. The NFC you could probably beat by 3. Packers were 9-8 last year, got in.
Washington, they have it 6.5. Philadelphia.
I'm gonna say they have both Dallas and Philly at 10.5.
Philadelphia's at 10.5. Dallas is at 10.5.
Bang bang, Mick Foley.
Best odds to win the division.
I'm gonna say Philly minus or plus 180.
Philly plus 115.
Oh wow,
Dallas
they really like Philly.
Yeah, Dallas. Well, I do too. Based on the rest of the division, they have Dallas at plus 130, and Giants Commanders at plus 1,000.
Yeah, I think that's probably appropriate.
But not the longest odds. Not the longest odds of teams in the NFL to win the division.
Is that
Kyle? And I'm telling you, it is not close. They have one team that is by far the least likely to win their division. It is not
AFC
close.
or NFC.
AFC.
Is it the Patriots?
Plus 2,700.
Yeah, I know the odds makers hate the Patriots this year.
They hate Denver too,
which is ironic because they've loved them every other year on the face of the planet.
They think Denver has a better chance of winning the AFC West. Okay, Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid. Hello, everybody here. The Patriots do win in the East.
I don't know. But that's a story for next week.
Yeah, next week is AFC East.
Next week is AFC East week here on the show. We're here to finish the NFC and make you all mad in the process. We have our tier maker. If you're watching on YouTube, welcome. You can see we have the tier maker up. We're going to do the 4 teams in the division in each of the categories that we scored the rosters on. This is not an all-encompassing list. Please do not screenshot the list outside of context and be angry about it. We talk about the nuance behind it. It's also not weighted as far as if you're a 12-personnel team or an 11-personnel team or anything like that. It's not designed to be a blanket be-all, end-all, but it's how we are grading the position rooms for quarterback, skill players, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, and secondary for this group. And when we do the aggregate of your roster total, these are the 6 position groups that will be weighted in accordance to positional value. And within each one of these buckets, tackles are weighted more than guards, for example. So there's some weighting that's already happening, and then that will be weighted even further when we rank your total rosters. So let's get into it, Joe. Shall we? Start with quarterbacks.
Yeah.
In the NFC East. Is it easier to start at the top or the bottom?
It's not. And neither spot is easy, Kyle. There's 2 There's 2 in consideration for the top. There's 2 in consideration for the bottom. I think for the bottom, it's probably this easy. One of them's a rookie. All right. One of them's played in the NFL and have had some level of success.
I agree with that school of thought. You know, I think the pathway for Daniel Jones being better than Jayden Daniels is the fact that he has playing experience. It's a high leverage situation. The interior offensive line is better for them this year. We don't know what we're going to get with Jayden Daniels. It's all new, right? We have high expectations. I could see very easy. Jayden Daniels is a more physically talented player. And if he puts out in the first 3 weeks, his body of work looks really good, they'll probably be ranked in front of New York the next time we do this update. At the top.
You have conviction.
Somebody's going to screenshot this right now.
I know.
And they're going to be like, oh, you got Daniel Jones because we only put New York and Washington on, and Philly and Dallas aren't on yet.
Do you have convictions with this?
I kind of do.
I sort of do.
On the count of, in the E and 3, tell me who you think is the better quarterback between Dak Prescott and Jalen Hurts. 1, 2, 3. Dak Prescott.
All right.
Okay, so we're in consensus.
It was hard. It was hard, though. It was hard.
Yeah, I think Jalen Hurts, at his best, can be a more challenging player to defend at times. He uses his legs more. Not that Dak can't use his legs. I just think Dak has just become such a well-rounded passer. And he is capable of extending plays and getting outside the pockets. He has that mobility to him. I think Jalen's stats get the little buff because of the tush push as far as like the touchdowns, rushing on the ground. If you had to give me somebody in a 2-minute offense situation to go down the field and score and go 80 yards with one timeout, you're probably picking Dak, right?
But Jalen's not bad in those moments, man.
No, he's not.
Especially in the playoff run. I mean,
if we were doing this last year, which we did, we would have had Jalen Hurts in front. You can't just ignore the season that happened. And he came out
right.
Was it yesterday and said 95% of the offense is new.
Good.
I think it's
he didn't know where his answers were last year, brother.
Right.
He didn't have a clue.
So I think 1 and 2 are coin toss. I think 3 and 4 are coin toss. But I think you and I are on the same page as far as how to stack them with the information that we have right now.
Dak Prescott has proven to be a more scheme transcendent player than Jalen Hurts, and it's not particularly close.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's the perfect justification we need to upset all the Eagles fans.
Okay, spoiler. I think the Eagles are the best team in the division. I think they're going to win the division. So be mad all you want.
Yeah, but that's not going to go on the tier maker, so nobody cares.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
We'll make you feel better here, Philly fans. We think you have the best skill group from top to bottom in the NFC East when you consider 2 cornerstone wide receivers, a quality starter at running back, a quality starter at tight end. You got some depth options. Not a ton of great depth options, but you got quality starter as like the floor in each of your primary spots.
Yeah, dude, this is a chasm, right? Like this is by far the best skill group in this division, and getting Saquon Barkley as the running back. Did you hear Nick Sirianni's quote on that?
About we got your best player.
You got your best player, yeah. Because I think he mixes it. How is he mixing it up with Giants fans that often? That's crazy to me. But I guess proximity where he lives out there. Yeah, right? I'm sure that happens. Yeah. But yeah, dude, I think Philly with a running back like that. And I know DeAndre Swift had a great year, but like from a talent perspective, I think Saquon's is really special. Best in the division. So coming in at number 2 is Dallas, who obviously carried very heavily by a cornerstone player of their own. And CeeDee Lamb, who's
time out.
Kyle's calling a timeout.
So I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
Is CeeDee Lamb the best skill player in the division?
It's him or AJ Brown.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking you. Who is it?
I take CeeDee. Yeah, I take CeeDee. Would you?
Probably, but AJ makes me think about it.
Oh, he makes you think of it. It's down to those 2 guys.
I'd probably take CeeDee. I think you can move CD around. I think CeeDee's a little more dynamic as far as like this menu of what you can do with him, and dynamic as a mover.
And I think they're going to age very differently. And AJ Brown's Absolute physical
how
power.
many receivers have you seen like that have hit like 30, 31 and
it's it.
does not age gracefully?
Right. We'll enjoy you while we can. I think there's a
Yeah.
longevity component with CeeDee Lamb that intrigues me.
Good call. The third place team in the NFC East as it pertains to the skill players, Washington Commanders, with a cornerstone in Terry McLaurin, a back that we like in Brian Robinson to go along with a very productive other back in Austin Eckler. Once upon a time, very productive tight end in Zach Ertz. You have some promising flashes from Jahan Dotson. And I think all of that combined is enough to stick them in front of the New York Football Giants.
Yeah, and I think that's all about Malik Nabers becoming a superstar, right? If that happens, you're going to feel a lot better about what the Giants have. But they just don't stack up right now. The tight end situation's a complete mystery. I like Devin Singletary as a sufficient level starter, but your depth there is kind of lacking. I
just don't like him like you.
Yeah, it's hard to like him like me, right? My favorite, you said on the pod, is my favorite player in the NFL.
Favorite player in the league.
I don't know. Maybe it's Corn Lucas.
Corn Lucas, good old Corn. I'm glad he came up.
Get him in back-to-back days. But I think, Malik Nabers, Theo Johnson, a couple of young players, you're looking for them to become a thing. But until they're a thing, they're last in this division. All right, we're going to focus in on the trenches, O-line, D-line. That's coming up, so be sure to stick with us. Passion, drive, and patience, what brings home the winning trophy, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fits only available to U.S. customers.
All right. So we're going to go to the trenches. Start with the offensive lines. Let me go ahead and pull the tier maker back up for those of you who are watching on YouTube. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. This one's pretty easy, too. And chasm, you mentioned chasm for skill players. There's a chasm here for offensive line. It's the Philadelphia Eagles. They have cornerstone offensive tackles, multiple, plural. They got another quality starter in Landon Dickerson.
Yeah.
That's an elite trio of players, and they all move people, too. So you think about the tush push and all the success that they have. It's incredible that in losing Jason Kelce, you look at the entire unit and you still feel like Philadelphia can stack up. Now, I think their depth has been hurt a little bit.
So the Eagles, the best offensive line in this division, and then really the next three teams, it's pretty tight. There's a lot of concerns and questions about all of them, but I think the team that we have the least amount of big questions and the most amount of stability is the Dallas Cowboys. So they come in at number 2. Obviously, this is heavily influenced by having guys like Zach Martin and Tyler Smith at guard. And then Terrence Steele, we need him to come back, but we do have 3 years of pretty good tape of Terrence Steele at right tackle. So now from here, it's Tyler Guyton at left tackle, Brock Hoffman / Cooper Beebe at center. Those guys come in and wind up being, sufficient level starters or better. This is going to be, once again, one of the better offensive lines in the league.
Yeah, I think it is ironic that you talk about most stability and least questions, and you have potentially 2 rookie starters and a player who is coming off a significant injury, and that still stacks as well as it does. I think that's a testament to both Zach Martin and Tyler Smith for what they were this past season for Dallas / what they are as players. But as we look towards the bottom half, this is an interesting kind of 1-2 punch because it's 2 teams that have spent. Like the Giants spent to get some fresh bodies in here. Washington spent to bring in Tyler Biadasz. But the Giants, I think, having Andrew Thomas is the difference here. We have the Giants ranked as the 3rd offensive line. And having a cornerstone in Andrew Thomas to go along with what's now an elevated floor for the rest of the group, sans Evan Neal, which we need to figure that one out, is enough for them, kind of the ceiling of that player. And you've seen across the league, there's some offensive lines that have fairly low ceilings with the collective group, but if they have one or two needle moving players, it's enough. And I think that's represented here with the Giants and Andrew Thomas, putting the Giants at 3 in this division from an offensive line standpoint in front of Washington.
Washington at 4. You mentioned spending. They gave Nick Allegretti starter money, $10 million per for Tyler Biadasz. I think the anchor of this group is Sam Cosmi at right guard, Andrew Wiley, a high floor starter at right tackle. And I think where you're going to get your real improvements is obviously Allegretti and Biadasz becoming reasonable starters for you. But you do have Brandon Coleman as a draft pick. You do have Jayden Daniels last year as a draft pick. So those guys kind of becoming maybe your real competition for Cornelius Lucas at left tackle. I think that would be helpful. But Washington is, it's got to come together here. And I'm hopeful, but I think they got the most work to do. And again, it was kind of close between Dallas, the Giants, and Washington, to be honest with you, sorting out 2 through 4 here.
And that's a testament to multiple spots, I think, on all of those units kind of being to be determined as far as the ceiling and the floor of what they're going to give their teams this year.
Yeah.
Going to the defensive side of the ball, the Cowboys are going to jump back into first place here, Joe. And Micah Parsons does some heavy lifting here when you consider the role that he plays as one of the elite pass rushers in the league. But Dallas also having DeMarcus Lawrence, Sam Williams has developed into a pretty reliable forecasted player for them. You have Odigizua at defensive tackle. That's a big development for them to finally get a hit on all of these. It seems like they were invested in 2 interior defensive linemen every year for 5 years, right? Yeah. And they finally get one that hits that you feel really good about as a quality starter in Odigizua. And that collective talent is nudged in front of our second place team. And this is a really strong division from defensive line standpoint, from top to bottom. They're all pretty well represented.
Yeah. Eagles coming in at 2, though, just a tick behind Dallas, where that cornerstone and Parsons and some of the development that Kyle just talked about is what gave them the edge. But Philly's really good here as well with impact starters like a Josh Sweat and a Jalen Carter and a Bryce Huff coming over, and good depth players in Milton Williams and Brandon Graham. I think the player here that could really take this to the next level is Jordan Davis, right? Like if Jordan Davis continues his development and can be a difference maker right now, I think he's kind of set a decent expectation of what we're going to get from him, but can he really elevate and be like a difference making type player? I think that would go a long way in elevating Philadelphia, but this is obviously a really strong group to begin with.
I think Jalen Carter can also level this group up a little bit. I think Bryce Huff being a little bit more of a complete player can level this group up a little bit as well. I think there's another level Josh Sweat can tap into. So for Philly, you got Brandon Graham on the downswing and you lose Fletcher Cox. So maybe, another year from what those guys were a year ago, one of them's gone. The other one, you kind of know is going to be your third guy at best. Nolan Smith's the wild card here too. There's a lot of upward swing mobility for Philadelphia if these guys catch lightning in a bottle or these guys click.
No doubt.
Now, I guess what's fascinating is there's a lot of depth here for them, a lot of youth. Vic kind of had his guys last year in Miami. They kind of settled on like 14 guys until injuries settled in through the first 10 weeks of the season. That if you were one of those 14 guys, which is kind of your base 9, and then like a nickel corner, a third pass rusher, and then like another hybrid player, you didn't get a lot of run. So I'll be interested to see how big the rotation is this year for Vic, how quickly these guys can catch on with this new scheme. But I would not sleep on Nolan Smith and his versatility. Think about Andrew Van Ginkel in that defense last year.
Yeah.
I think Nolan Smith could really be a wild card that helps Philly chase Dallas down too.
A lot of ceiling.
The third place team. Let's change the tabs back and come back again.
It's the Giants.
Thank you. New York Giants, two cornerstones, right? That's the difference. They get Brian Burns in the trade, cornerstone player. Dexter Lawrence, probably fair to say top 5 defensive tackle in football.
Yeah, he sure is.
That is enough to push you in front of a Washington team that has Deron Payne and John Allen as well-established quality starters, but I don't think either one of them played their best ball last year. And then the edge group for them is a little bit of an incomplete as they've transitioned obviously away from Montez Sweat and Chase Young in recent time. And the guys that they are filling in the blanks behind that with we're still learning a little bit about, or need to see Cleveland Farrell take on a bigger role, or Dorrance Armstrong be kind of the featured player on an edge group, or is Dante Fowler going to be what he hasn't been for the past several seasons and be a high volume player? I think there's just questions there on the edge for Washington that leaves them a little bit behind.
Yeah, in addition to the depth at defensive tackle behind Allen and Payne, there's not much to get excited about there. So I think that edge group, if Dorrance Armstrong really, they paid him like a starter, if he can showcase that, I mean, there's room here. And then of course, don't sleep on Jamin Davis getting those rush reps, man. No, nobody wants to talk about it, but I'm interested. In that.
All right, we're getting coming up.
Back 7 on defense, linebackers and secondary. So be sure to stick with us.
I have good news for any Commanders fans that have stuck with us.
It's your moment.
This is your time to shine, guys. You spent big. Between Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu, from an AAV standpoint, it's $16+ million per for a couple linebackers. And then Jamin Davis, who Joe just can't help himself to keep talking about. This is the best 1 through 3 linebacker room in the division, I think. And I don't know that it's close.
No. Yeah, it's not particularly close. I think there's plenty of concerns about the rest of the linebacker rooms in this division. We do have number 2, the Dallas Cowboys. I think there's a reasonable expectation on what you're going to get from Eric Kendricks and Damon Clark as their starters. We'll see what happens with Maris Lufau, a fairly early draft pick, kind of the guy waiting in the wings, certainly the succession plan for Eric Kendricks, you would think would be the plan there. But and we just don't have much in the way of linebackers after Washington in this division.
Yeah, I think the next best individual player is Bobby Okereke, right?
Yes.
And the challenge for New York is you got 2 very different skill sets in Isaiah Simmons and Micah McFadden. If you could put them together into one player, you'd probably have a really good 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
But Washington having the 1 through 3 depth, where Dallas kind of has end stage Kendricks and Damon Clark is a little bit of a physically limited player. I think Okereke's better than both of those guys that we mentioned. It's just the challenge of the other spot is more role players instead of somebody you feel like would be a definitive starter.
I think Okereke's the best linebacker in this division.
Yeah, I think that's an accurate statement. I think Luvu's a little different skill set.
Yeah.
Bobby Wagner at this stage of his career, I think it's probably fair to concede that Okereke's got more juice. And then you got Philadelphia with them doing what they do every year. And they do not care. Howie does not care.
Well, we heard he didn't care about running backs, and then he signed Saquon Barkley.
That's weird. It's weird you mentioned that because we heard that for years.
Yeah. Every time you did a mock draft and gave him a running back, I mean, Philly fans wanted to send you to the moon.
Running backs.
Yeah. All right. Well,
he won't do it.
Yeah. All right. Well, maybe we'll see if he invests in a linebacker at some point.
No, they did it with Darius Leonard last year, right?
Was that an investment? I mean, it was like Zach Cunningham, Nicholas Moreau. It was tough. It was tough seeing there, but
the secondary is kind of a haves and have-nots as far as this division. I think you have the most complete unit. That's important. The complete unit is the Dallas Cowboys. When you consider Malik Hooker and him being a revelation the past few years at safety, now they're undergoing a scheme change, but then again, so is Philly, right? And so is Washington. So it doesn't really help you to say, oh, well, there's not continuity with Dan Quinn leaving. Malik Hooker's been awesome the past few years for Dallas. A really reliable player and kind of evolved too. I think that's what's interesting. I don't know how much we talked about that, but he's become a good tackler.
Yeah.
And that was not the book on him coming out of Ohio State. It was, well, he's played center field, and God, it feels like a generation ago, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Malik Hooker coming out and be a single high free safety, and everybody still covets that guy that can play center field in the post, and very different animal these days. And Hooker's evolved his game to his credit, and he's been able to stay healthy, which was the other thing he was banged on. And then you have Trevon Diggs coming back, and Deron Bland with his ball skills opposite of that. And Diggs, obviously, I think both of those guys with their nose for the football. There's some level of feast or famine that I think is fair to criticize. But I think when we get into the rest of this division and you kind of see some of the regression / total unknown elements of the next team that we're going to talk about, I think that's where you get the justification of Dallas going out in front.
Eagles at number 2 here. And I think there's a lot to like with the infusion of Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean as draft picks. But we got to see what happens with those guys in the NFL. Those were players I had in my top 11, in both of them in this draft class. So very high on them. But I think we got to sort out the slot here a little bit. And again, maybe that could be Cooper DeJean. Bringing back CJ Gardner-Johnson's a nice addition for the group. Darius
How about
Slay.
Bradbury getting reps at safety?
Yeah, you might. I mean, you always kind of felt like that could be the trajectory for him with his career. The wheels sort of fell off last year at corner. So I think that might be not a bad idea.
I think he's done at corner.
Well, certainly. I mean, Quinyon Mitchell should be the starter there opposite of Darius Slay. So there's some young players, some guys that need to develop. And if they do, they'll certainly challenge Dallas, but we got a lot to learn about these players.
Number 3, Washington. And you have, I think Washington, the story for Washington and their secondary is the floor of the safeties kind of gives them a little bit of a boost, right? Michael Davis has at least been an adequate level starter at corner, but you got Derek Forrest and Jeremy Chin and Jeremy Reeves. And I think the floor of that group kind of helps them get a nudge in addition to the growth that you saw from Benjamin St. Juste this past year. And then a player that doesn't aggregate you any points, but we're both very high on him, Mike Sanderson.
The Giants are last, Kyle. And like, what do we even know about the Giants secondary? Like Jason Pinnock is like a pretty good player and who knows?
What we know about it is the least serious position group in this division.
No question.
Well, that and Philly's linebackers.
Right. Though they can have a pissing contest over who's the worst. But yeah, I think these are those are the type of position groups where you look at it and feel like, man, that's going to be prohibitive. And at least for Philly, it's linebacker. And you're talking about your secondary. And I think both at corner and safety. And now look, Tyler Nubin, draft pick, Drew Phillips, these are high draft picks. Like they need to be things for them. But Deontay Banks and who's opposite of him? Is it Nick McLeod? Does Cordell Flott finally settle in? There's just a lot of unknown commodities here with this Giants secondary.
It's the variance of outcomes. And I don't even think you mentioned Deontay Banks, second-year player, and what he can and can't be. So it's the variance of outcomes for the Giants. Maybe it's good. Maybe it's better than you think. But right now, based off the information and the body of work that you have on these guys, you just don't have anything to work with. And that's the challenge for them is so much youth, so many inexperienced players that you really don't have a choice but to slot them in 4th in this division. So Shane Bowen will have his work cut out for him in that regard, right?
You know what's funny is I sat here and I said, I think Philly's going to win this division.
And now you look at it.
Well, Dallas is 1 or 2 in every single category. But the one that Philadelphia is 2, the one that they're not is linebacker.
And they don't care about it. So
they don't care.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's a more interesting debate on whether Washington, with their spending and youth, versus the Giants in a high leverage year, but needing to win, but they didn't really get a lot of investments to kind of help them from a reinforcements perspective, other than the defensive line with Brian Burns.
Yeah,
I think the battle for 3 is more interesting than the battle. Well, that's not true. I think the battle for 3 is tighter. No, I don't think that's true either. I think it's more mysterious.
If it's not Philly and Dallas duking it out for 1 and Washington and the Giants duking it out for 3, I'd be stunned. I'd be really stunned.
That is the NFC East tier maker. We trust you're angry. If you are, let us know in the comments. Joe will read them. I will not. And we'll be back again next week to start with Joe's Buffalo Bills with the AFC East week coming up next week. We're looking forward to that. I'm Kyle Crabbs. He's Joe Marino. We are Locked On NFL Scouting. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Make it a great rest of your day. Make it a great weekend. We are out of here.